Maria Turner's near-death experience transformed her understanding of life, death, and faith. The moments she spent on the brink of eternity left an indelible mark on her soul, reshaping her perspective in ways she never thought possible. As she lay unconscious, teetering between this world and the next, Maria encountered something, or someone, that would forever alter the course of her life. Her journey into the unknown depths of existence uncovered truths that challenged everything she thought she knew about reality and spirituality.
The crisp mountain air filled my lungs as I stepped out of our SUV, stretching after the long drive. My husband Tom and our 2 kids, Emily and Jake, were already unloading our camping gear. The national park sprawled before us, a vast expanse of towering pines and rugged terrain. As we set up camp, Tom's eyes gleamed with excitement. "I found this incredible trail on the map," he said, spreading out a crinkled piece of paper. "It leads to a breathtaking viewpoint. We should tackle it tomorrow." I hesitated, noting the trail's difficulty rating, but Tom's enthusiasm was contagious, and I found myself nodding in agreement. The next morning, we set out early, our backpacks laden with water and snacks. The trail started easily enough, winding through sun-dappled forests. But as we climbed higher, the path narrowed and grew steeper. Loose rocks shifted under our feet, and I found myself constantly checking on Emily and Jake, making sure they were managing the terrain. The landscape transformed around us. Dense forests gave way to rocky outcroppings, offering glimpses of the valley below. Tom led the way, his pace steady and determined. I brought up the rear, torn between admiration for the stunning views and concern for our family's safety. As we rounded a bend, the sound of rushing water filled the air. The trail descended sharply, leading us to the edge of a swift-moving river. The water churned and frothed over smooth, dark rocks, its roar drowning out our voices. Tom pointed excitedly to a series of stepping stones that crossed the river, forming our path forward. I froze at the water's edge, a knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. The stones looked slippery, worn smooth by years of rushing water. The current tugged at the edges of the rocks, threatening to sweep away anyone who lost their footing. Emily and Jake peered at the water with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Tom stepped onto the first stone, turning back to offer me an encouraging smile. "It's not as bad as it looks," he called over the roar of the river. "Just take it slow and steady." I nodded, but my feet remained rooted to the spot. Something in the back of my mind screamed danger, urging me to turn back. As I watched Tom make his way across, followed by our children, I took a deep breath and stepped onto the first stone. The rock was slick under my boots, and I felt my heart race as I fought to maintain my balance. With each step, the rushing water seemed to grow louder, more insistent. I was halfway across when it happened. My foot slipped on a patch of wet moss, and for a split second, time seemed to stand still. I saw Tom's face contort in horror, heard Emily and Jake's startled cries. Then the world tilted, and I felt myself falling towards the churning water below. In that moment, as the river reached up to claim me, I had no idea that my life was about to change forever. That this seemingly ordinary family camping trip would become the catalyst for an extraordinary journey beyond the veil of death itself. As I slipped into the river's merciless grasp, time seemed to slow. For a split second, I hung suspended between balance and free fall. I saw Tom's face contort in horror, his hand reaching out uselessly. Emily and Jake's startled cries pierced the air. Then gravity took hold, and I plunged into the churning water below. The shock of the icy river knocked the breath from my lungs. I tumbled end over end, disoriented by the furious current. The roar of the water filled my ears, drowning out my family's panicked shouts. I fought to right myself, limbs flailing against the relentless flow. My fingers grasped at smooth, slippery rocks, finding no purchase. The world became a blur of white foam and shadowy depths. My muscles screamed with the effort to keep my head above water. I caught glimpses of the shoreline rushing past, trees, rocks, and the blurred figures of my family running alongside the river. The current tossed me like a rag doll, slamming me against submerged rocks. Pain lanced through my body with each impact. I tried to call out, but water filled my mouth, choking off my cries. The taste of silt and panic flooded my senses. My lungs burned for air as I was pulled under once more. In those desperate moments, a strange calm began to settle over me. The initial panic faded, replaced by an almost detached awareness of my dire situation. I realized with startling clarity that I might not survive this. Yet, instead of fear, I felt a curious acceptance washing over me. Ahead, I saw the river bend sharply. The water churned more violently as it approached the turn. I knew instinctively that this could be my last chance to break free of the current's grip. With renewed determination, I fought to angle my body towards the shore. But the river had other plans. As I rounded the bend, my head struck something hard. A boulder, hidden just beneath the surface. A burst of pain exploded behind my eyes. The world spun, then faded to black. The last thing I remember was a sense of weightlessness, as if I were floating away from my own body. In that moment of impact, everything changed. The roar of the river faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. The cold and pain melted away. I felt myself drifting, suspended in a void between life and death. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would take me beyond the veil of mortality and challenge everything I thought I understood about existence itself. One moment, I was plunging into darkness. The next, I found myself floating above the river, watching a scene that seemed impossible. Confusion washed over me as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. How could I be watching myself from above? Despite the surreal nature of the situation, I felt an inexplicable sense of calm. The fear and pain that had gripped me in the river were gone, replaced by a profound peace. As I observed the rescue attempt below, I noticed details that I shouldn't have been able to see. The time on a paramedic's watch, the serial number on the defibrillator, snippets of hushed conversations between the rangers. The gravity of the situation began to sink in. Was I dead? Was this what it felt like to pass from one world to the next? I thought of my family, my unfulfilled dreams, the life I might be leaving behind. A pang of sadness pierced through my otherworldly calm. Yet even as I grappled with these thoughts, something else caught my attention. In the distance, a warm, inviting light began to shimmer. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, gentle and alive, pulsing with an energy that seemed to call to me. It promised answers to questions I didn't even know I had. I felt myself drawn toward the light, my earthly concerns beginning to fade. The pull was gentle but insistent, like a tide slowly carrying me away from the shore of my old life. As I drifted further from the scene of my accident, I cast one last glance at my family. Part of me wanted to stay, to comfort them somehow. But the light beckoned, growing stronger and more alluring with each passing moment. As I surrendered to the light's pull, a sense of anticipation built within me. I was on the threshold of something extraordinary, about to embark on a journey beyond imagination. The light enveloped me, warm and welcoming, and I felt myself moving forward into the unknown. What awaited me would not only change my understanding of life and death, but would also give me a message so profound that it would alter the course of my existence, and potentially the lives of countless others. As the light enveloped me, I felt a shift in reality that defied explanation. Have you ever wondered what lies beyond the veil of our earthly existence? What I experienced next would challenge everything I thought I knew about life, death, and the nature of the universe itself. The light surrounded me with a gentle, all-encompassing radiance. Unlike the harsh glare of sunlight or the artificial glow of fluorescent bulbs, this light didn't hurt my eyes. Instead, I found myself drawn deeper into its embrace, as if it were welcoming me home. As I moved forward, the sensations intensified. The warmth grew stronger, not in temperature, but in emotion. It felt like being wrapped in pure acceptance and peace. My mind raced to make sense of what I was experiencing, but words fell short. Gradually, the formless light began to take shape around me. The boundaries of my surroundings slowly came into focus, though they remained fluid and ethereal. It was as if I had entered a space that existed between dimensions, neither fully physical nor entirely spiritual. Soft, billowing forms reminiscent of clouds drifted by, their edges shimmering with an inner luminescence. Then I heard it, the faintest whisper of music. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but as I continued forward, the sound grew clearer. It was unlike any music I had ever heard on Earth. The melody seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a harmony so perfect it brought tears to my eyes. It was as if the very essence of creation had been distilled into sound, each note resonating with the fundamental truths of the universe. As the music swelled, I noticed a change in the light ahead. The formless radiance began to coalesce, taking on a more defined shape. My heart raced with anticipation. Something, or someone, was emerging from the brilliance. The figure slowly came into focus, its outline becoming clearer with each passing moment. And then I saw him. Standing before me, arms outstretched in welcome, was Jesus Christ. The recognition was instant and absolute. This wasn't the Jesus I had seen in paintings or imagined from Sunday school lessons. This was a being of pure light and love, more real and alive than anything I had ever encountered. His presence was overwhelming. Waves of unconditional love washed over me, bringing with them a sense of belonging. I felt known, truly, deeply known, in a way I had never experienced before. Every flaw, every fear, every doubt I had ever harbored seemed to melt away in the warmth of his gaze. As I stood there, bathed in his radiance, a thousand emotions coursed through me: joy, awe, humility, and an indescribable sense of homecoming, all mingled together. Tears streamed down my face, though in this ethereal realm, they seemed more like liquid light than water. I wanted to speak, to fall to my knees in worship, to ask the countless questions that had plagued humanity for millennia. But in that moment, all I could do was bask in his presence, overwhelmed by the realization that I was about to embark on the most profound encounter of my existence, one that would forever alter my understanding of life, death, and the very nature of reality itself. Have you ever imagined meeting God face to face? Nothing could have prepared me for the reality. As I stood before Jesus, time seemed to stand still. His presence radiated a warmth and love that defied description, appearing as pure light given form, with features both familiar and otherworldly. His eyes held the depth of eternity, and when he smiled, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. Jesus spoke, his voice resonating through my entire being. "Maria," he said, my name sounding like a melody on his lips. "Do not be afraid. It is not yet your time." Those words stirred a mix of emotions within me: relief, but also a surprising twinge of disappointment. Part of me longed to stay in this realm of pure love and peace. Yet, as I looked into Jesus' eyes, I saw a glimmer of something more, a purpose that extended beyond my own desires. "There are things you must see," Jesus continued, his tone gentle but urgent. "Truths that you must witness and carry back to the world." I found myself nodding, words failing me in the face of his majesty. Jesus held out his hand, an invitation and a promise wrapped in one simple gesture. As I placed my hand in his, I felt a surge of energy course through me. The ethereal landscape around us began to shift and change, coalescing into new shapes and scenes. "What you are about to witness," Jesus said, his voice filled with both compassion and gravity, "will challenge your understanding of life, death, and the choices that echo into eternity. Are you ready, Maria?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. This was more than just a near death experience. It was a divine appointment, a chance to glimpse truths beyond mortal comprehension. With a mixture of reverence and determination, I met Jesus' gaze and whispered, "I'm ready." As we stepped forward into the shimmering veil of light, I couldn't shake the feeling that what I was about to see would not only transform my own life, but could potentially change the world. The first revelation awaited, and with it, the beginning of a journey that would redefine everything I thought I knew about existence itself. The shimmering veil parted, revealing a scene that would forever alter my understanding of life's final moments. Jesus guided me forward, his presence a comforting anchor in this otherworldly realm. Before us stretched a vast expanse, neither fully physical nor entirely spiritual. At its center stood a crossroads, bathed in a soft, ethereal light. Souls from all walks of life approached this junction, each unaware of the profound significance of their journey. As we watched, I noticed two distinct paths diverging from the crossroads. One radiated warmth and peace, while the other seemed shrouded in an unsettling darkness. Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder, his touch conveying both love and solemnity. "Watch closely, Maria," he said, his voice resonating through my being. "What you're about to witness is the moment that defines eternity for each soul." A woman approached the crossroads, her face etched with a lifetime of experiences. As she reached the junction, a gentle light enveloped her. Her expression transformed from uncertainty to profound peace. She took a step onto the brighter path, and I saw what awaited her. Loved ones, long since passed, rushed to greet her. Their faces shone with joy as they embraced, tears of happiness streaming down their cheeks. The woman's earthly burden seemed to melt away as she was welcomed into this realm of pure love and acceptance. "This," Jesus explained, "is the transition for those who followed me in life. Their faith and love opened the door to eternal joy and reunion." Jesus then turned my attention to the other path. A man approached the crossroads, his demeanor confident and self-assured. But as he reached the junction, no light enveloped him. Instead, a shadow seemed to fall across his face. He hesitated, confusion and then fear etching themselves into his features. With growing unease, I watched as he took a faltering step onto the darker path. There were no loved ones waiting to greet him, no joyous reunion. Instead, an overwhelming sense of emptiness seemed to engulf him. "And this," Jesus said, his voice heavy with sorrow, "is the fate of those who chose to reject love and forgiveness in life. They face an eternity separated from the source of all joy and peace." The stark contrast between the two paths shook me to my core. I turned to Jesus, my mind reeling with questions. "How can this be?" I asked. "Is there no chance for redemption after death?" Jesus looked at me, his eyes filled with infinite compassion. "The choices we make in life echo into eternity, Maria. That is why the message you will carry back is so crucial. Every soul has the opportunity to choose love, forgiveness, and faith while they live. But once they cross this threshold, their path is set." As I absorbed the weight of this revelation, I understood the urgency of the message I had been entrusted to share. The knowledge I now possessed had the potential to impact countless others, guiding them towards a path of eternal joy and reunion. The celestial landscape dissolved, revealing a vision of unparalleled magnificence. "Behold," Jesus said, his voice resonating with power. The day all of creation has been waiting for. What unfolded before my eyes was both terrifying and glorious. A glimpse of an event that would shake the foundations of reality itself. The sky erupted in a brilliant display of light, far surpassing any natural phenomenon. Through a cosmic rift, a figure of unimaginable majesty descended. This was Christ in his full glory, surrounded by countless angels and radiating a light that outshone the sun. As he approached, the earth itself trembled. I struggled to comprehend the sheer scale of what I was witnessing. How could any human mind grasp such an event? The reaction of humanity was a sight to behold. Those who had placed their faith in Christ looked up in joy and wonder, their faces transformed by an otherworldly peace. They began to rise from the ground, drawn towards their Savior. Their bodies changed as they ascended, becoming glorified and perfected versions of themselves. In stark contrast, those who had rejected Christ recoiled in fear and disbelief. Some fell to their knees, overcome by the weight of their choices. Others tried to flee or hide, but there was nowhere to escape the all-encompassing presence of the returning King. As Christ's feet touched the earth, a wave of transformation swept across the planet. Pollution vanished, barren lands bloomed, and wars fell silent. It was as if the world was being renewed, restored to its original perfect state. The vision reached its climax as every knee bowed before him. All lies, deceptions, and false ideologies crumbled to dust. Truth reigned supreme, and the veil between the physical and spiritual realms was torn away. As the scene faded, I found myself overwhelmed by a mixture of awe and humility. The petty concerns and struggles that had once seemed so important now appeared trivial in light of eternity. I understood with crystal clarity why Jesus had shown me this glimpse of his return. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with both love and urgency. "Now you understand, Maria," he said softly. "Every choice, every action ripples through time and impacts eternity. This is the message you must carry back to the world." I nodded, my heart burning with the weight of this revelation. As the heavenly realm began to fade around me, I knew my time here was drawing to a close. Jesus had one last message for me, words that would guide me as I prepared to return to my earthly life with a mission that would change everything. As the heavenly realm faded, I felt an inexorable pull back towards my physical form. The journey back was a blur of sensations and emotions, each moment bringing me closer to the life I had left behind. Jesus' final words echoed in my mind, a reminder of the great responsibility I now carried. The weight of my mission settled upon me as I hurtled through the light. I had witnessed truths that could alter the course of countless lives, and now it was my duty to share them. A mixture of determination and trepidation filled me as I contemplated the task ahead. Colors and images flashed by, fragments of the visions I'd witnessed. I clung to every detail, every revelation, knowing how crucial they would be. The ethereal peace of the heavenly realm slowly gave way to the dull ache of my physical body. With a jolt, my consciousness slammed back into my earthly form. My eyes flew open, and I gasped, drawing in a ragged breath. The stark white ceiling of a hospital room swam into focus above me. The steady beep of a heart monitor filled my ears, a harsh contrast to the celestial harmonies I'd just experienced. As my senses slowly returned, I became aware of Tom's presence beside me. His face, etched with exhaustion and relief, came into view as I turned my head. "Maria?" he whispered, his voice breaking. "Can you hear me?" I tried to speak, but my throat felt raw and parched. The full weight of what had happened, my accident, my journey beyond death, and now my return, washed over me. I had died and come back, and now, lying in this hospital bed, I knew my life would never be the same. The message I carried burned within me, urgent and vital. The truths I had witnessed about life, death, and the choices that shape our eternal destiny demanded to be shared. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, a steely resolve took root within me. I had been given a second chance, not just at life, but at purpose. Whatever obstacles I might face, I was determined to fulfill the mission entrusted to me. The incessant beeping of a heart monitor pulled me from the depths of unconsciousness. My eyes fluttered open, greeted by the stark white ceiling of a hospital room. The sterile brightness was jarring, a harsh reminder that I was back. My entire body ached, every nerve alive with the pulse of the machines around me. Then his face came into focus. Tom, his exhaustion etched into every line of his expression. Relief flooded his features when our eyes met. Maria? His voice cracked as he whispered my name. Can you hear me? I tried to respond, but my throat was raw, the effort scraping painfully. Tom offered me a sip of water, the cool liquid soothing the fire within. Tom, I croaked, tears filling my eyes. I I saw. The door creaked open, and in came the doctor, followed by Emily and Jake. Emily rushed to my side, clutching my hand as if letting go might mean losing me again. Mom, she cried. Jake lingered near the door, his wide eyes betraying the fear he tried to hide. As the doctor began his routine checks, I answered mechanically, my thoughts still tethered to where I had been. How could I explain the brilliance I had seen, the presence of Jesus, the truths revealed to me? I turned my gaze to the window. The world outside looked unchanged, yet I felt utterly different. I was a visitor in my own body, acutely aware of the fragile thread that tethered us all to this earthly life. Mrs. Turner, the doctor said, pulling me from my reverie, you're incredibly lucky. You were clinically dead for over 6 minutes. The fact that you're awake and coherent, it's miraculous. 6 minutes, I repeated, barely a whisper. In that brief time, I had transcended everything I thought I knew, glimpsing eternity itself. I need to tell you something, I began, my voice trembling as I turned to Tom. While I was gone, I saw. But the disbelief in the doctor's eyes and the apprehension on Tom's face stopped me. I made a silent vow. Whether or not they believed me, I would share my message. It was a burden and a blessing, a mission to change lives, even if it meant enduring doubt and ridicule. As my family surrounded me, their love grounding me in the present, I felt the weight of my new purpose. The road ahead would be treacherous, but I was determined to tread it, no matter the cost. I sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. Tom leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his face a mixture of concern and something I couldn't quite place. Pity, maybe? I know it sounds unbelievable, I began, my voice soft, tentative. But I saw him, Tom. I saw Jesus. He showed me truths about life, about death, about the choices we make. Tom exhaled heavily, rubbing a hand through his hair. Maria, listen. You were clinically dead. The brain does strange things when it's deprived of oxygen. Maybe it was just, he hesitated, a hallucination? I bit my lip, frustration bubbling under the surface. It wasn't a dream, I said, more forcefully than I intended. It was real, more real than sitting here with you right now. Over the next few days, I tried to share my story with those closest to me. My sister, ever the believer, listened with tears streaming down her cheeks. My best friend chuckled awkwardly, quickly steering the conversation back to safer topics. My parents exchanged worried glances, their suggestion of therapy stinging more than they likely intended. It was exhausting, this constant effort to make people see, to make them believe. Late at night, I found myself glued to my computer screen, searching for others who had experienced what I had. I found comfort in their stories, the eerie similarities to my own journey, giving me a sense of solidarity, even if these were strangers. One night, as I pored over yet another account, Tom appeared in the doorway. His voice was soft, careful. "Maria, it's 2 in the morning. Maybe it's time to let this go. Focus on healing, on getting back to normal." I turned to face him, feeling a new wave of resolve. "This is my normal now, Tom. What I experienced, what I learned, it's too important to ignore. I can't just go back to how things were." The next morning, I knew what I had to do. Sitting at the desk in the small study we barely used, I opened my laptop and began to write. The words flowed like a torrent. I described everything: the light, the love, the overwhelming presence of Jesus, the truths he revealed about life and death. I poured my soul into every sentence, determined to honor the gift I had been given. Tom hovered nearby, his skepticism gradually replaced by a kind of reluctant respect. Even if he didn't understand, he could see how deeply this mattered to me. As the final words left my fingertips, I stared at the screen, heart racing. The manuscript was finished. My story was out, at least in black and white. But what would happen when I shared it with the world? I hesitated, my cursor hovering over the send button. With one click, my manuscript would be on its way to the publisher, a step that felt as monumental as the experience itself. The doubts came rushing in. What if no one believed me? What if I was mocked, labeled a lunatic? But then I thought of the light, the love, the mission I had been entrusted with. I closed my eyes, drew a deep breath, and clicked. 3 months later, I stood backstage at a community center, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the audience could hear it. This was my first public speaking event. I peeked through the curtain, scanning the faces in the small crowd. Some looked curious, others skeptical. I could feel their judgment before I had even said a word. As I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight blinded me momentarily. For a fleeting second, I almost turned back. But then I began to speak. My voice trembled at first, but as I recounted my journey, the memories gave me strength. I watched the audience closely. Some leaned forward, captivated. Others sat back, arms crossed, their faces set with disbelief. I spoke to them all, hoping to touch at least one heart. When the talk ended, a small line formed. People approached me with tears in their eyes, sharing their own struggles, their own doubts about faith and eternity. For the first time, I felt that my story was making a difference. Over the next months, my life became a whirlwind of talks, interviews, and letters from strangers. My book gained traction, drawing both praise and criticism. For every person whose life was changed, there were others who dismissed me as a fraud. Through it all, I clung to the truth I had witnessed. Each insult only strengthened my resolve. Each thank you humbled me. One evening, as I sat in my study, I felt a peace wash over me. This was my purpose now, to share the truth, no matter the cost. I glanced at the window, the setting sun casting its golden light over the room. Somewhere in the depths of my soul, I felt his presence, smiling. The sun had barely crept over the horizon when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Groggily, I reached for it, squinting at the screen. A message from Sarah. My heart quickened as I opened it. Her words spilled across the screen, brimming with gratitude. She described how my story, the one I sometimes still questioned sharing, had profoundly altered her perspective on life and faith. She told me about finding the courage to mend a broken relationship with her estranged sister, a step she believed she never would have taken without hearing my testimony. I set the phone down, staring at the wall as the weight of her message settled over me. This was becoming a familiar feeling, a mix of awe and humility. Over the past few months, stories like Sarah's had poured in. Skeptics, grieving parents, and even people who had mocked me initially now reached out with confessions of transformation. Each account chipped away at my own doubts, reminding me that what I had seen and felt was real. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Tom, a link to a local news article. I clicked it open, my eyes scanning the headline. Local man's act of kindness sparks community movement. As I read on, I felt my breath catch. The article detailed how John, a man who had attended one of my talks, had been inspired to start a volunteer program at his company. He wanted to encourage his colleagues to prioritize compassion and generosity, values he said he had ignored for too long. What began as a small initiative had grown into something incredible. Businesses across the city were now competing to contribute to the community. I scrolled to the comments section, my chest tightening as I recognized several names. People who had emailed me or attended my talks were sharing their own stories of transformation, their words sparking conversations with strangers. It was like watching ripples on water, spreading outward, connecting lives in ways I couldn't have imagined. But not all ripples reached the shore. I thought of Rachel, the woman who came to my talks, but admitted she was too afraid to embrace the faith I spoke about. And David, the perpetual skeptic, who lingered after each session, asking probing questions but refusing to believe. I stood walking to the window. The street outside was still quiet, bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. My fingers brushed the cool glass as I stared out, my heart heavy with both hope and responsibility. Not everyone would believe me. I knew that, and even those who did might struggle to live out the truths I shared. But as the first rays of sunlight painted the sky, I felt a deep sense of peace. This wasn't about convincing everyone. It was about planting seeds. Turning back to my desk, I picked up my phone and began typing a response to Sarah. Her story, and the others like it, were proof that the ripples had a purpose, even if I couldn't always see their final destination. The journey that had begun on that rocky riverbank was far from over, and as I hit send, I felt profoundly grateful. Looking back on my journey, I can scarcely believe where it has led me. From a slip on a river rock to a moment that redefined my existence, the path has been anything but ordinary. The story I've shared isn't just mine. It belongs to everyone who has chosen to listen, reflect, and act. It belongs to Sarah, who found reconciliation, and to John, whose kindness sparked a movement. It even belongs to Rachel and David, because even doubt and struggle are steps on the journey to understanding. I've learned that the impact of my near-death experience wasn't confined to me. It was a gift meant to ripple outward, touching lives in ways I might never fully comprehend. If there's one message I hope to leave behind, it's this: life is fleeting, but the choices we make echo in eternity. Love, forgiveness, and faith. These are the things that truly matter. My story isn't over, and neither is yours. Each day is an opportunity to live with intention, to create ripples that stretch beyond what we can see. So I ask you, what ripples will you leave behind?